Hello and welcome. The essence of what is taught in this video can be summarized very simply. Inner stop is about taking a step back from one's reactive emotions and thoughts, refusing to engage with them, and refusing to allow them to turn into reactive behavior. However, as some of you may know, there's often a huge gap between theoretical knowledge and understanding how it's played out in practice. Therefore, you may want to stick around for the rest of the video, as the information presented here will help you get out of the mental traps that we often find ourselves in. Applied correctly, the teachings in this video will help guide you toward a state where you can move through life with much more ease and effortlessness, instead of life moving you while you kick and scream, trying to work against whatever comes in your way. Now, the practice of inner stop in the fourth way system is about halting not the flow of thoughts completely, since this is impossible from our normal state. What happens instead is that you create an inner gap between your awareness and the automatic, mechanical processes that govern our inner and outer actions. This creates a conscious pause that allows for self-awareness and the opportunity to observe yourself from a different vantage point, which, in turn, allows you to step into a space of intentionality. It's, in other words, not about resisting or repressing thoughts and feelings, but about observing them with detachment as they arise, and refraining from getting caught up in them and starting to believe what they are saying unquestionably. This moment of stillness allows us to perceive our internal state more clearly and gain insight into the reactive, mechanical nature of our reactions. This requires a specific kind of effort, often referred to in the work as conscious effort. It is an active engagement of attention that goes beyond intellectual understanding. To initiate an inner stop, you might start with a physical halt, such as pausing your movement or stopping mid-action. This outward act becomes a mirror for an inward shift, a momentary suspension of automatic thought and emotional flow. In that suspension, you create a gap in the habitual narrative that usually governs your experience. Here, you can also see another interesting aspect of the human experience that few are aware of, namely that every little choice you make affects you. If you consciously choose to stop, it has an effect on your stream of thoughts, which in turn causes you to feel and behave slightly differently. This will furthermore have a small effect on how your brain develops through the process called neuroplasticity, which in turn will affect your future inner life and behavior, and so on. This could be regarded as a micro version of the butterfly effect. If you have some prior knowledge about the fourth way, and if you're paying attention, you may have noticed that a core part of the fourth way teaching is to create this gap between your awareness and your internal processes. When you start noticing that you don't get so caught up in your inner drama anymore, an important shift has begun. This gap is not an act of dissociation, but a cultivated space of observation where conscious presence becomes possible. Before someone begins to experience this, even though he or she may have an intellectual understanding, this understanding is forgotten as soon as a negative emotion or a strong desire is triggered. The person then becomes unable to distinguish him or herself from the flow of internal and external influences. In other words, the person becomes identified. What you do in the practice of inner stop is essentially to interrupt the autopilot. To understand this, you need to really understand what it means that most people basically sleepwalk through life, and you need to apply it to your own life and your own experiences. To become aware of all the ways your external circumstances trigger automatic, habitual thoughts, emotions, words, and actions. The fourth way teaches that negative emotions are among the most mechanical aspects of human life, often arising from deeply ingrained patterns of reaction. By applying inner stop, you can catch the moment when a negative emotion begins to take hold and create a pause before it fully manifests. In this pause, there is an opportunity to observe the emotion without feeding it, and possibly to redirect the energy towards something more intentional. To understand this fully, you need to grasp how this plays out in real life. What happens is some variation on an external event occurring, or some memory coming up either randomly or because something triggers it. This causes you to feel a familiar emotion or set of emotions which you are often only vaguely aware of. The emotion or emotions set a cascade of habitual thoughts in motion. This may or may not spill out into your words and actions, often depending on how good you are at self-regulating and how much social pressure is present that causes you to suppress your reactions. You may, for example, respond in very different ways to something quote-unquote going wrong depending on whether you are alone at home or if you are in a crowded place among hundreds of people. It can in itself be interesting to contemplate how and why the presence of other people affects our ability to regulate our behavior. Now let's look at how this stimulus response process may play out. Let's say, for example, that you feel that you don't have control over your finances. An unexpected bill may then trigger feelings of hopelessness in you. Now, if you pay close attention to what is going on, you will see that the same types of thought are present in these types of situations. Thoughts like, for example, I can't take this anymore, it's useless, nothing will ever get any better, and so on. And if you have a partner, you may start venting your hopelessness to him or her. This means that much of our daily lives sort of just happens, without any real conscious awareness. The mechanical momentum of habits and automatic reactions often governs our experience, creating an illusion of intentional living while, in reality, we are driven by unconscious patterns. These patterns, formed by years of conditioning, learned responses, and conflicting desires, propel us forward with little or no conscious input. We act, think, and feel as though caught in a script, blind to the possibility of choice. The effectiveness of inner stop lies in its simplicity and depth. By halting even briefly, you challenge the inner momentum of the fragmented eyes, the part personalities that fight for dominance over your thinking within the psyche and therefore typically drive your behavior. An inner stop offers a rare moment where the multiplicity of eyes can be observed as a whole, without one dominating the field of awareness. This requires not only practice, but also a commitment to inner honesty. You must be willing to confront the parts of yourself that resist stillness and cling to habitual patterns. This notion has to be turned around a couple of times to really make it stick. It's easy to say that we are committed to being honest with ourselves, but still lie to ourselves because what we observe in ourselves may not conform to social norms or the image of what we think a good person should be like, or our self-image. Thus, for this practice to be effective, you need to be conscious about how you handle what you find within yourself as well. You are asked to treat what you find with a sense of detachment, which we will look at a bit closer now, as we look at a practice that is closely tied to inner stop. This is the practice of self-observation, the cornerstone of the fourth way system. Self-observation involves directing attention inward to witness the continuous flow of thoughts, emotions, and actions without judgment or interference. This process requires developing a state of divided attention, where one simultaneously engages with the external world and observes the internal. Without self-observation, the machinery of inner life, driven by fragmented part personalities and habitual reactions, remains invisible, leaving one at the mercy of unconscious patterns. While self-observation is about noticing the flow of activity, whether through thoughts, words, or actions, inner stop creates a still point within that flow, offering a clearer view of the mechanics at work. As stated in the beginning, inner stop is about consciously refusing to engage with the activity inside. It's about just allowing it without doing anything with it, which eventually will make the activity calm down on its own. To do this effectively, you have to be aware of the activity and what is happening with it. By observing the habitual flow of thoughts and feelings, you become better equipped to identify moments when inner stop is needed. At the same time, the pause created by inner stop enhances your ability to observe yourself from a state of presence rather than from a state of identification. For example, when engaged in a routine activity, one might practice inner stop by halting mid-action. This physical interruption mirrors an inner suspension, revealing the fragmented thoughts and emotions that drive the action. In this moment, self-observation becomes sharper, as the usual distractions of movement or identification with thoughts and emotions are temporarily removed. The inner stop creates a space where one can observe the interplay of the many different personalities within more vividly and begin to recognize their automatic nature. Each moment of stopping weakens the hold of mechanical behaviors, while self-observation strengthens the capacity to see clearly and respond consciously. As stated in the beginning, you can't stop the flow of thoughts or emotions, but you do have the choice of whether you respond to them or not, and this will in turn change the character of the thoughts and emotions. Now, what we are talking about here may seem self-evident, but have you really consciously stated to yourself that you have a choice of whether to engage with your thoughts and emotions or not? The reason that you are asked to reflect on this is not a trivial one. There are so many things that we, in a sense, know because they are self-evident to us. But before we put what we know into words and actually apply it to our experiences, this so-called knowledge is just theoretical and abstract, with no practical consequences for us. This practice also serves to increase one's awareness of the energy that flows within the body and mind. The fourth way speaks of the human being as a system of centers: intellectual, emotional, moving, instinctive, and higher centers that govern different aspects of experience. Inner stop acts as a way to momentarily harmonize these centers by breaking the mechanical dominance of one over the others. For example, if the intellectual center is overly active, generating a flood of repetitive thoughts, or if the emotional center is overwhelmed by reactive feelings, the inner stop can bring balance by interrupting these patterns. We have a whole video on the 4 centers that are governing us and our interactions with our experiences from our quote-unquote normal state of functioning, and there will be a link to it at the end screen. In summary, the practice of inner stop in the 4th way system is about creating a deliberate gap between your awareness and the habitual mechanical processes that govern your inner life. It's not about silencing your thoughts or emotions, but observing them with detachment and choosing not to engage in reactive patterns. By refusing to act on automatic responses, you begin to see the fragmented nature of your inner world and gain the freedom to act intentionally rather than react mechanically. Combined with self-observation, inner stop helps you identify moments where conscious presence is needed, allowing you to move through life with greater ease and clarity. This transformative process requires effort, honesty, and the willingness to face yourself fully, but it opens the door to deeper awareness and a more harmonious relationship with your inner and outer life. Through the consistent practice of inner stop, you can begin to reclaim moments of your life from the grip of mechanicalness, moving closer to the state of inner freedom that the 4th way aims to cultivate. This freedom is not about escaping the realities of life, but about engaging with them from a place of clarity and self-awareness. In this way, inner stop becomes a gateway to the transformative possibilities that lie within the 4th way tradition. Finally, even though some 4th way practitioners may disagree with this, the aim of this video is not to add another burden to your shoulders. Instead, you may see it as a way to help a natural process of de-identification with your thoughts and emotions that all souls eventually go through. And you are invited to use this practice not as something to force yourself into constantly, but as a way of training yourself to break the identification with your mental activities. In fact, in the 4th way, it's stated that inner stop can sometimes lead to moments of awakening, where one glimpses a higher level of reality beyond the mechanical plane of existence. These moments are fleeting but transformative, offering a taste of what is possible for us once we've let go of the baggage that keeps us down. The state where we are finally released from all of the ceaseless mechanical activity that we are socialized into, and which we, before waking up to it, don't even think of questioning. Again, in the end, this is simply about learning to observe whatever is going on inside, while refusing to engage with it or allowing it to spill over into your words and actions. As you become more proficient at this, making conscious, intentional choices in your day-to-day life will gradually become easier. This will, for obvious reasons, take time, so don't be discouraged when you suddenly find yourself caught up in your inner drama because something has triggered you into identification. What you are invited to do is to allow these teachings to sink in, keep them in the back of your mind as you go through your life, observe how these mechanics play out in your interactions with your experiences, and practice inner stop as often as you can without making it into a chore and thereby creating resistance. You've now reached the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for your time.